Hey guys, welcome back to Vertical Momentum. I am your host, Richard Kaufman, also known as the Comeback Coach. Guys, this is going to be a fun episode. I'm so grateful for my friend Aaron. We became friends a little while ago. He's a one bad dude. But the best part, he's a father, he's a husband, speaker, podcast host. He does it all. Not only that, but he just ran the Badwater 135. And I wrote this down because it really interests me. It's 282 feet below sea level when you start and over 8,360 feet above when it ends. Now, he did all this while being blind and deaf. And Mr. David Goggins actually had a problem running the Badwater 135. So we're going to be talking to my brother about how is it better to be blind or to not have vision for your life. Aaron, brother, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Richard. I'm glad to be on. And when you put it that way, the Badwater sounds kind of crazy to do, but uh, I appreciate you being here.
I'm so grateful for you. Thank you for your friendship. Like I mentioned earlier, like I said, the best thing is I love that you're a believer. You're also a father and a husband, and that's what I really appreciate about you. First question is, what is your definition of resiliency?
I've heard it so many times. It's the ability to bounce back like a rubber band, but we aren't made out of rubber. So resilience for us, we get stretched, and when we come back, we're stronger. So for me, my definition of resiliency is how quickly we can recover, get stronger, get smarter, grow, learn, adapt, and carry on.
I love it. So we're going to hop back in the Wayback Machine. Tell us a little bit about where you come from, where did you grow up, and a little bit about your military service.
Sure. I'm originally from Akron, Ohio, actually a suburb, Bath, Ohio, and it was just a great place to grow up. Um, Lots of woods and trees, played football and did that Midwestern life. It was fantastic. Uh, I had lots of friends, really enjoyed it. Didn't really want for much. And at the same time, I had enough natural talent and ability to just get by without having to put a whole lot of effort in anything. If anything else, I used a little bit of BS to get through. Of course, when I got to college, that didn't really play. So uh, I didn't have the goals, any of that, um, work ethic, or even much by way of vision for my future. I just went to have fun, and eventually I found myself getting kicked out of school for really terrible grades. Um, that's when I found a new path with the military. I decided I needed to get those internal, core values. Yeah, the work ethic, ambition, it's something to accomplish, a goal in life, and the military uh, did all that for me, and it helped me earn that, you know, tuition I just pissed
All right,
away.
so
So,
let's talk about that a little bit because I joined. Now I'm not the smartest tool in the shed, and I know that. Um, I'm street smart, book smart, not so much. Well, back then, and the only thing I qualified back then for was infantry and a tanker. So I chose the tank route. Talk to us about your recruiting story and why you chose what you did.
well, the thing was is that I was a very social person and very creative, artistic, and um, I love being in crowds. I love pleasing others and making friends. I was in all of the cliques. I was a floater, and um, Also, my whole family has, an art gene in their DNA. My mom, my brother, incredible painters and sketch artists. Me, loved to cook. My creative gene took me to the kitchen, and that's how I ended up as a cook in the Navy. And I had quite a bit of talent for it, and quickly worked my way up to cooking for the commander of the Sixth Fleet in Gaeta, Italy. So I was cooking for a three-star admiral, the guy is in charge of the all U.S. Navy forces in the Mediterranean and the Eastern Atlantic. It was fantastic. I was making real food, and I was getting to be that creative guy I love to be. I was touring around the Mediterranean, and on duty, we were going from all these amazing ports around the Med, and off duty, I was taking those MWR trips to places like you know Paris and Munich, and it was definitely not a hardship duty, but being in the military, it was exactly what I needed to first lose that freshman 50 from I got picked up in college, and it taught me exactly what I needed to learn. You know, responsibility, dedication to improvement, the pride in accomplishment, that kind of stuff. Actual work ethic, and along the same lines, I also learned more of those external values like service, and pride in working as a part of a team, and that pride in being part of the military in general. It was an incredible thing, but that was early 2000s. I joined at a time of peace, and soon we were in two different wars. So even though I was part of the big military machine, and every job is important, I'd begun to take what I'd learned in the military and realize that it, I could be doing more for the effort. I could be serving a greater role rather than simply cooking. And I didn't want to watch. Yeah, I didn't want to watch the war play out on television, even though I was on board the ship. We were in the middle of the Med, and I wanted to do something a little more kinetic. I wanted to be, right there. So I volunteered in 2006 to become an individual augmentee on a provincial reconstruction team in Afghanistan, a PRT. Of course, being a Navy cook, they let me run an Army chow hall in Fob Farah. It was way out in the middle of nowhere. Even the Taliban were like, "You guys can keep that." But I went from cooking for the admiral and his top maybe 35 top brass to cooking for the hundreds of ISAF NATO troops. It was ironically, uh, we were not far from Herat, which was the main location for the Italian contingent, and I got to practice. There were a couple platoons of Italian national or Italian special forces right on Farah, so I got to practice my Italian I'd picked up in Naples and Gaeta while I was out in Afghanistan. But that's when I met some EOD technicians. I was cooking, and I was going from the chow hall to the barracks area, and I met these EOD techs doing their maintenance checks on all their gear out of their they dumped out of their armored truck. They had robots and bomb suits, and they were just changing batteries and cleaning things and making sure everything worked. I struck up a conversation with these guys, and boom, that's when it clicked. This is what I need to do. EOD, explosive ordnance disposal, military's bomb squad, first responders on the battlefield, lifesavers. and the job was just that technical aspect of it, and it was these guys find the most complex problems on the battlefield, bombs that have unexploded ordnance, landmines, and they render them safe, or they dispose of them, and they're the ones that have to deal with IEDs, the improvised explosive devices, all those roadside bombs, everything that goes boom on the battlefield is in their wheelhouse. And it just clicked. That's what I had to do.
So you had to obviously had to go reclassify, right, and go to school?
Well, the Navy, I guess, liked my cooking too much, and when I put in the request, they denied it. As it turns out, my rank in it was considered, it was the CS, culinary specialist, was undermanned. So they didn't want me to leave the cooking field, and they weren't going to promote me either. So when I left Afghanistan, my time in my enlistment was coming up. So I also had a decision to make. Was I going to re-enlist as a cook, or would I try to pursue EOD with another branch? Of course, everything is waiverable, but nobody wants to tell you. And I suppose I could have fought, to become an EOD technician in the Navy. I just didn't realize that I could. And I did love being a sailor. I still have salt in my veins, but I left the Navy. I went over to an armor recruiter, and they welcomed me in. So I changed uniforms, changed jobs very drastically. I tell people, once I got my first confirmed kill with an egg roll, I decided to start saving lives instead. And I
So,
started training up as an EOD technician.
so obviously, did your nickname become Cookie?
Actually, they would call me Spoon out on the battlefield.
Okay. So you went over to Afghanistan, correct?
I was in Afghanistan. Well, I was, my first deployment as a cook, and then once I trained up as an EOD tech, my first deployment was to Iraq, and then I deployed a second time to Afghanistan. My third actual deployment, my second to Afghanistan. That was in 2011, and by then I was an EOD team leader. So the guy that actually gets in the bomb suit and makes the long walk.
So, because everybody knows, like, there's training and then there's the real shit. So what was it like the first time you put on the bomb suit for the real shit? What was that like, taking that walk?
Well, the first time I actually, worked on a live IED, I didn't have the bomb suit with me. We were on dismount patrol, and I had to do it without that protection. But it was exhilarating, terrifying. All those adrenaline feelings, and at the same time, I had to let that training take in. I had to keep my situational awareness. What's going on around me? Is there an ambush? Who's watching? What's going on with our troops? What's going on in the air? And what is my team doing? And I had to put a whole lot of trust in all the resources and people around me to make sure that they were doing what they are supposed to do. And they had a lot of trust in me that I was going to make sure that that particular hazard was taken off the battlefield. So there's a lot going on, but thankfully I got, after that I had many more opportunities to do the same thing and take more hazards off the battlefield.
Okay, so let me know. I joined the military when I was 17. I got out when I was in my 40s. So I went from being the young guy to being the old man. And when I became an NCO, I took that my NCO creed very, very seriously, taking care of my guys. So, what is it like knowing that you're sending your guys into harm's way? Take us into the mindset of a leader.
It's an interesting dichotomy there, especially with EOD, where we send our most experienced, our most senior guy on the battlefield to into danger, and the team members are the support element behind. So I'm the one that suits up and goes goes down on the unexploded ordnance or the IED, but it doesn't mean that I don't have to foster that leadership role. And I don't, I still have to take care of my team. I have to make sure that they're trained and they're prepared to, hopefully soon one day take my position and be prepared. That's part of that creed. Part of when I became an NCO, it was told to me that half of my job, and I took this to heart, is that half my job is teaching others how to replace me. And everybody that's no anybody that's not yet an NCO, not yet a sergeant or a petty officer or anything like that, it eventually should be prepared to take my role and move forward. So we were constantly training, or I was constantly doing the hip pocket, training, trying to explain what way I was thinking about a problem. There's no one particular right way to do, just about anything in the military, especially with EOD. It comes down to a whole lot of creativity. In fact, I use the example of each three-person team in AOD is given this huge container full of tools, from the bomb suits and the robots to power tools and the armors and hazmat kits and decontamination tanks and all that kind of stuff to do everything from hand grenades and bullets and landmines to rendering safe or mitigating the hazard of weapons of mass destructive and nuclear weapons. So
So, okay, take us to the morning of the incident. What was your morning like before the incident, and then take us through the incident?
Well, I was just coming back from 2 weeks of R&R. Back home. I went to DC. I got to see my son, my firstborn, turn one. I got to hang out with the whole family for Thanksgiving. It was fantastic. Last page in the mental photo album. And my team picked me up from the airfield in Kandahar, and we were heading back out towards our AO on a supply convoy, and we are just hitching a ride with this train of trucks heading out towards our area of operation, and right on Highway 1 as we were heading back towards our little area, our AO of Sia Choi. There were, a call came back that said, there's an IED on the side of the road. We want you to take a look at it. So I tossed my travel bag off the robot out of the truck, and it got to work. We found exactly what we've been finding for the entire time we were out there. 8 months of a 12-month deployment. We were doing these pressure plates with a oil jug full of homemade explosive connected to a 9-volt battery with lamp cord. Really low tech and really effective, because they were just littered all over the place. They were buried everywhere. Every footprint, every footstep in Afghanistan, in this particular region, was a deliberate act. And here was another one. While we were working on it, the robot did what it was supposed to. It tore the parts They separated all the components, but they couldn't get the jug out of the hard pack. I wanted to get as much evidence as I possibly could so we could get left of the bang on the timeline, get that bomb placer, get the bomb maker, the financer, all that kind of stuff. So I hopped out of the truck and I started making my way towards what was already rendered safe. So I didn't have a bomb suit on. And about 20, 30 feet from the first ID, there was a secondary device that hadn't been detected. That thing punted me into the air. I landed on my knees and elbows. I was still conscious. However, I don't know how lucid I was. The lights had gone out. I did, again, the situational awareness thing, the training, the military training, you just took over. I was thinking, what is my team doing? What, is the security card on? Are they all looking in and we just went bang instead of looking out? Is there an ambush coming? What's happening? So I knew that my team was going to clear a safe path to me so the medics could get to me and get me out. That's standard operating procedure if an EOD team leader goes down. So I knew that I didn't want them coming into a potentially hazardous area. Uh, but the first thing was first, I did the functions check, wiggle the fingers and toes, make sure everything was intact. Everything seemed to be there. So I thought the lights had gone out because my helmet had just been pushed over my face. So I reached up to fix my helmet to find out that that was gone. And that's when I thought, oh no, this is bad. First sergeant's going to kill me for losing that. And I did realize that, yes, I'd taken some damage. The blast was bad enough to rip my helmet clean off, my eye probe off my face, and do whatever damage to my head and face that, I hadn't quite known the extent yet, but I knew that I couldn't see. But still, I stood up. I started making my way towards, like walking towards the truck so my team wouldn't have to come to me. Of course, I had no idea where the truck was anymore. I just gotten spun around, couldn't see. Eventually, they grabbed me. Would kind of imagine I just looked like a zombie walking around the battlefield. But they grabbed me, dragged me back to the truck. The medevac chopper was there in like 14 minutes. I, just left the airfield, and within 48 hours, I was at Walter Reed, coming to realization that I would never see again. The blast had taken both of my eyes. It blew out my eardrums, but I could still hear. I just lost some of my hearing at that time, and it cracked my skull in a few places to where I was actually leaking spinal fluid right out of my nose. That and your standard cuts and scrapes and burns. But interestingly enough, even though the blast came from beneath me, I don't know if it was offset, if it was the hard packed dirt again, but it channeled the blast, and I only got hit in the head, virtually untouched from my neck down. For hard-headed Hales like we are, that was a perfect place to hit me. But uh, sitting there, going through that, the what ifs, the why me's, the those little demon voices in the back of your head. They came to visit me in Walter Reed. I was just angry. Why did it happen to me? And what if I'd done something differently? And there's all these questions that just cannot be answered. And they just took me deeper into, forgive the pun, into that darker place. Thank goodness for having an incredible family and an incredible support system with the military. And frankly, I just got not built for self-pity. And it was one of my fellow team leader buddies that was on in the same company had been injured just a couple weeks before. And his humor Kyle Vickers is an incredible human being. It was his humor and his support and him being there and having those friends and all those other warriors up and down the halls at Walter Reed that were fighting their own personal battles. I just realized that it was, I'm responsible to them, for them, my family, my son, my wife, my parents, brothers and sisters. These warriors, they're not quitting, and I can't quit either. So I stopped listening to those demons. I stopped asking the wrong questions. And instead of why is this happening to me, I started asking questions like, why is this happening for me? Instead of saying, I can't, I can't see anymore. I can't do this. I can't do that. I started asking, how can I? And I
All right,
decided
so
to
let
reach
me,
out.
let me ask you a question because I lost my vision for about 18 months. I sat in darkness. And a lot of, like you said, a lot of thinkings, a lot of the what if I could, what if I should, what could I have done different? Um, but after that, I started appreciating the other things in life. I started appreciating being able to hear, being able to touch. I started appreciating the other senses. And then one of my amigos, I call them my amigos. There's about six of them. They keep me on track. And they said, "Hey, you're the comeback coach. Isn't it time for you to come back?" And I was like, "Oh, shit, you got me." But I had to start, like you said, I had to start realizing my new normal, and I had to start rebuilding my life. So that's something I want to talk about. I want to dig deep into it because they call me the male Oprah and the GI Joe Rogan. So we're going to go a little bit deeper, brother. But first, I want to thank our sponsors. As you guys know, I was with GNC for over 30 years, in the military for 23. I loved coffee and pre-workouts, but they all tasted like ass. So I came out with my own vertical momentum coffee. The best part of this coffee is 100% of the proceeds go to help veterans struggling with PTSD and homelessness. For every bag you buy, 100% of the proceeds go to help 12 families. We're going to take them in for a year, take care of them and their families financially, physically, healthy, and spiritually for 1 year at no cost to the veteran. So, guys, if you love coffee, write it down below and I'll get you that information. Also, Aaron, you know that we military personnel, we are the ultimate demographic. Only 2 to 3% of our country have ever served, and a lot of companies don't realize that if you hire a veteran, you're getting the best of the best. So my fellow veteran David Nordell actually started a company called Max Fab Consulting, where he teaches companies why they need to hire a veteran and how to hire a veteran and get the most out of a veteran. So guys, if you're a CFO, CEO, and want to hire the best of the best, say veteran down below and I'll get that information to you. So Aaron, let me ask you, because one of my best friends, or one of my great friends, James Clear, wrote a book, Atomic Habits, and it talks about how you have to change your routine. So what was your routine when you decided, all right, I'm sick and tired of sick and tired, I need to start rebuilding and reimagining my life?
I love James Clear, and the Atomic Habits is one of my favorite books, especially since there's no fluff in that book. It's all about doing the. It's not about good or bad habits. It's about what habits take you closer to your goals and what habits take you further away. And for me, it was holding on to some really good habits that the military taught me and letting go of some habits, that weren't, working for me anymore. And first I had to decide, like, this is who I'm going to be. I'm going to be a blind person. So if I'm going to be blind for the rest of my life, I'm going to be the best damn blind person I can be. So I started learning, and that's one of the things about the military that I absolutely love is that it's perpetual education, perpetual training, always learning. The first thing I could do as soon as I got out of the hospital, actually I went checked into another hospital. I went to the VA hospital in Augusta, Georgia, where they've got one of the VA's blind rehabilitation centers. And for 6 months, I learned how to be blind. You know, the adaptive uh, software, accessible devices, barcode scanners for my pantry. You learn how to use the long white cane, that kind of stuff. Simple living skills like how to pair my socks and how to know when I've been a cook for years and how do I get around the kitchen, that kind of thing. And also, as soon as I could learn how to use a computer or search on my phone, it was doing internet searches, blind plus outside, blind plus fitness, blind plus whatever, to figure out how I was going to stay fit and not be stuck on sitting on the sofa for the rest of my life, feeling sorry for myself and maybe crawling into a bottle or popping pills. And a few names started popping up. Lonnie Bedwell is the first blind person to kayak the entire length of the Colorado River through the Grand Canyon. And Eric Weinmeyer, the first blind person to climb Mount Everest. And you know what? I looked these guys up. And there's another thing the military is really big on is mentorship, right? You go to the person who's been there and done that. So I looked Lonnie up and I went kayaking with him. I looked Eric up and I went mountain climbing with him. And I started doing all these things. I even found out that there were a few active duty soldiers that are blind and still doing the job in uniform. Captain Scott Smiley took charge of he was a company commander for one of the warrior transition units. And uh, Ivan Castro, he was a active duty Army Ranger at Special Operations Recruiting Branch in Fayetteville.
Yeah.
So I called Ivan up and we had this conversation. He was the guy who told me he liked to every year run the Air Force Marathon, the Army 10 miler, and the Marine Corps Marathon. And I thought, that's pretty patriotic and sounds pretty cool. I think I'll do that too. So I registered for all three of those races. I got myself talked into the Pensacola uh, marathon, and I don't even know how I got talked into the San Antonio Rock and Roll Marathon. But before I knew it, I was registered for 4 marathons and the 10 miler, all within a 4-month span. And I never.
Let me ask you a question because, and these are questions that I honestly have that interest me. When you run, do you have spotters, or how does that work? So you're not going in a total different direction, or you're not running over people. How does that actually work?
How does blind running work?
Yeah, I mean, because I live here in New York, and every time I watch the marathon, there's a million people starting out at the same time. So how are you not running into people or staying on track?
I just keep yelling Marco. No.
Oh my God.
And truth is, I use a tether. I find a sighted guide, just like blind people do when they're not using their cane. They use a sighted guide, and they'll just hold on to somebody's elbow and let them lead them. Running is not much different. I have this very short nylon piece of webbing, like you would backpack strap, I had somebody sew a couple loops so I could fit about 3 fingers in one end, and my guide could fit some fingers in the other end, and it's just about 6 inches long. And we just run side by side, and I get all my cues. In fact, before I even had the that little tether, I was using a dog tug of war rope, 6 inch long. I hold a knot, and my guide hold a knot, and we just run like that. And besides, when we have to go, single file or something, all I gotta do is follow that rope and trust in my guide. Uh,
Now, did you start running before you lost your hearing?
well, I hadn't even run anything longer than a 10K before I lost my sight. But yeah, the army, big on fitness, and I would run about 5 miles every other day, with my team. But no, marathons, even half marathons, I never even considered it until after going blind. In fact, it was really just the side effect of just trying to find a way to get fit for these mountain climbs and these expeditions. I'd climb mountains in Colorado, climb mountains in Peru and the Andes. And it's really hard to find a decent mountain to train on in the Florida Panhandle. I live at 7 feet above sea level. So I started running and started working out. I made a pretty decent gym in my garage, and I would just run. And I found that just getting outside on a regular basis and socializing with my guides, it had it was a multifaceted effect. Uh, for me, everything is a team sport,
Okay, but then
including
you lose
including.
your vision, and then a while later, you lose your hearing. So aren't you like, son of a bitch? Again, I got to come back from this. Something else I have to come through and come back from.
Yeah, that was a real kick in the seat. Um, it was almost 4 years actually since the blast, and I was running these marathons. I was climbing mountains. I was whitewater kayaking. I was speaking. I was talking to people all over the country, telling them about this triumph over tragedy and success through struggle. And I was just coming back from one of those speaking events, and I was 2 weeks away from joining a team to climb Mount Kilimanjaro in Tanzania. And I was talking to a new girlfriend, and I'd also been through a divorce. But I was, things were going really well for me. And then one day I'm walking into the house, just coming back from the airport, dropped my bags, and I was feeling really fatigued and dizzy. And I told my girlfriend that I was going to lay down for a nap. I don't know if it was a few minutes or hours later, I woke up with just like an excruciating pain in my head. Migraine doesn't do it justice. And I had to call 911. Uh, I was out of it for about 4 days. And when I became lucid enough, um, my girlfriend, who lived on the other side of the country, in California, my mom, who lives up in Ohio, were both by my side in the hospital, and it sounded like I was underwater. I couldn't hear very well. It was like clogged or something, and they told me that I'd contracted bacterial meningitis. I guess that those cracks in my skull that they previously patched just hadn't been completely, healed or patched up, and bacteria went straight to the brain and was trying to kill me. And in the process, they the bacteria stole what was left of my hearing that the bomb blast didn't take. So yeah, I was pissed. After I got out of the hospital, it took me a few weeks. I did also lost my vestibular balance, that inner ear gyro.
Mhm.
So I came home in a wheelchair. And I mean, a couple of weeks earlier, I was running marathons. I was about to go climb that mountain. And there I am sitting in my breakfast bar, it locked inside my body. I couldn't get a message in. I couldn't hear. I couldn't see at all. I mean, imagine how isolating and frustrating that can be. I, I remember people complaining about the COVID quarantine thing, and I'm like, that's nothing. But yeah, those demons, right? The what ifs, the why me's. Like I was seeing doubts and fears and anger thoughts, were rattling around in my brain. I had plenty of time to listen to them because I couldn't hear anything else. And this time it was like, when have I paid my dues? When has this, when have I had my fair share? When is the soldier sacrificed enough? And it just again is that self-defeating, self-pity, that spiral that just leads to nowhere good. But I was sitting there, yeah, trying to figure out what the rest of my life is going to look like. Uh, um, it was a really sad, lonely time, and thank goodness, yeah, my girlfriend moved in. She didn't even go back to her apartment in California. She just had friends, drive her stuff cross country, and she nursed me back to health. My my mom stayed for a little while, and my sister came, and the whole family just swarmed and took care of me. And the my wife now was writing every letter of every word she had to communicate to me in the palm of my hand. I was thinking at the time, probably should have learned Braille when I was at blind school, but technology being what it was, it's a dying art and didn't need it until all the audio based stuff was muted. But
So
there was
then,
a
how are you hearing us as we talk right now?
well, even though both my ears are still completely turned off, uh, you know, I have this one cochlear implant that uh, it's not a hearing aid. It doesn't take audio in through microphones and amplify it down the ear canal. What it does is takes that audio and converts it into a digital signal. And there's a magnetized tether that sends the signal to the actual implant that is inside my head, and it goes to an electrode attached to the auditory nerve in my cochlea. And my brain had to learn an entirely new data stream of information, trying to figure out what this signal was and how to hear again. So it took a long time. It's kind of like hitting a bullet with a bullet, because they don't want to, the audiology, folks don't want to send too much information and overwhelm my brain. So it's kind of like learning primary colors first, and then every couple of weeks they would tune it in a little bit more. So as my brain's learning, they're giving it more information, and eventually got to the point where no amount of tweaking will make it any better. It's kind of like, imagine you call a friend, your friend's at a restaurant and picks up and puts it on speaker and just puts it in the middle of the table. That's what the whole world kind of sounds to me like. Yeah, just trying to figure out, and it's all a wall of sound. everybody's conversations, all the clinking of glasses and dinnerware all around. But uh, it's not. It's definitely nothing like the real thing. It's way better than the alternative. And I'm grateful for the technology. 40, 50 years ago, would have been pulling the full hell in color.
So, what is it like when you first started to run again and being blind and now deaf?
I had to learn a few things uh, a whole nother way. And, uh, but it was the same determination. In fact, it was when I started changing the questions, right? Instead of, uh, why is this happening to me? And start asking, why is this happening for me? And even better, why is this happening for me so that I can teach others? Because I'd been a speaker for almost 4 years, and I was talking this motivation and inspiration and you know hard work, and it was like the God or the fates or whatever what have you were saying, put your money where your mouth is, do it again. And I mentioned, EOD techs having this huge container full of tools, right? You get to the battlefield and we're given that armored truck, and we can't fit all of the tools in our truck and still be able to drive that thing. So we got to do a bit of a triage, right? And we leave some tools behind, take what tools we most likely need in that particular AO, and then we got to Afghanistan, and there's no roads. It's all goat trails. We have to go dismount, right? And we can only bring what tools and supplies or whatever we thought we might need for the mission ahead on our backs. So we got to leave a whole bunch of tools behind. And the thing is, we can't not do the mission ahead. We still have to do our jobs. It's like General Mattis said in his book, Call Sign Chaos. At least in the Marines, things being hard were never a good excuse for mission failure. And here I am, I had to leave a few tools behind, but I still have a job, I still have a mission. And that's the way I looked at it. So I got up from my breakfast bar, wobbly, legs and all, and I got to work. That's when I started. I got back on my my treadmill, and I would hold on to the stability bars with an iron grip, and I would just hit the quick start button, and I would walk half a mile an hour, and then I would just when I got comfortable with that, I would hit the speed up button, one beep, and then another, and and I'll just walk as fast as I can. I got on. I took my trekking poles that I would use to hike into the mountains, and I would use those as more like canes, both kind of antenna extended out in front of me, and to support me like a big daddy long leg crab like thing. And I would just walk out to my mailbox and back, and I'd be exhausted, but it was making progress, and I was getting better. Eventually, I was running again, and eventually, I started walking normally again. I still have balance issues. Um, I started cooking. In fact, Thanksgiving was coming up, and I started, I got in the kitchen and decided that I was just going to make a huge Thanksgiving feast. I started cooking weeks in advance. I started making all these cakes and pies and cookies and stuff, and I would just throw them in the freezer. And I started making fudge, and I would make batch after batch. It was so funny. You know, I would do one batch after another. I would like throw nuts and the spices. I go to the liquor cabinet and dump a little in there, a little in here, and I have a sip myself. And Michaela, my girlfriend, said she noticed two things. One was a smile on my face that she hadn't seen in 6 months, because it took over 6 months before I'd be able to hear anything from my cochlear implant. It was almost a year before I could actually have a conversation with somebody. And the other thing she noticed was the fudge was piling up. She started sneaking it out the front door, like you got to be real stealthy around a blind deaf guy. But she started giving it away. And people started coming back and asking for more, asking if they could buy it. Capitalist in me said, well, of course you may. And all of a sudden, we had this business, and we called it Extraordinary Delights, or eodfudge.com.
All right, so let me ask you, because you might, because my niece runs marathons. My cousin runs marathons. She's a military vet. So you might get somebody that might run with you for a 10K or a marathon. But when you say, all right, I need somebody to tether to because I want to run the Badwater 135, I'm sure there weren't a whole lot of takers at that point.
It's pretty difficult to find, training partners when your training run for the day is 30 miles. Uh, especially in the hot Florida sun. But yeah, there is a whole community of ultra endurance runners out there, and you just got to seek them out. And there are lots of runners for all abilities and paces, and you just got to find local running clubs. Plus, there's a buddy of mine, Richard Hunter, who's a fellow blind. He's a Marine. Um, he started unitedinstride.org, and it's like an online community where blind runners can connect with sighted guides. So if anybody out there wants to start connecting with blind runners and getting out there and helping them out, unitedinstride.org.
Okay, so now, Badwater, even David Goggins, even when I read a couple of his books and some of his interviews, he actually had some problems doing the run. So talk to us about what the actual run was really like.
I'm talking about Badwater.
Yep, Badwater 135.
Well, it had all sorts of issues. For one reason, it's called the toughest foot race in the world for a reason. It's not just 135 miles, but it's in one of the hottest places on earth, Death Valley. And there are like 3 mountain climbs to do along the way. And besides that, I'm also blind and virtually deaf. So I'd been running like I described side by side. And thankfully, I've been doing this for almost 90 years now, and thankfully my team and I decided we were going to arrive a few days early to just set up, prepare, acclimatize to the heat, and do a few training runs. And we very quickly found out that I would not be able to run side by side for almost any of the race. So the first challenge was, how am I going to get guided single file? With this little 6-inch tether. When briefly, my guide and I have to go single file, my guide will just take that tether and hide the tether behind his or her back, like they're literally trying to hide me. But it doesn't work very well for very long because I've got to keep my arm extended straight in front of me, and I'm tripping on heels. And it's very difficult. There's no way I could have done that for 135 miles. So thankfully, I did bring those trekking poles just in case. No idea what I'd be using them for. But we started the whole team, which is an amazing team. My coach, good Army buddy of mine, a running partner for years, that lives nearby, and a few others. We put our heads together and we came up with this, all together, we put this system together where we taped the tips of the trekking pole to the pacer's bib. So it's just a waist belt like a triathletes use, and it just says pacer on it, and it clips around the waist of pacer that runs in front. So we'd take the tips. I would hold on to the trekking poles, and they would kind of both bracket me in and uh, and guide me at the same time. But the coolest part about that is one difficulty I found over the years with that tether is that because I have to really pay attention to the information I'm getting through the tether that I'm holding when I'm running side by side. I had to hold my arm at a 90-degree angle, and I wasn't running with a natural arm swing. And I developed really nasty knots in my shoulders and my neck, and it caused so much pain over the years that I was afraid I'd have more pain in my upper body than like my legs or feet over this race. It's something I've learned to deal with. But as a awesome side effect of this new running system that we just developed was that the trekking poles were moving kind of like sideways pistons, horizontal pistons, uh, with the movement of my pacer's hips. So while the trekking poles were doing the piston thing, my arms were actually swinging. It was pretty much a natural arm swing, and I didn't have any shoulder issues at all, no pain. And but of course, that was just to get me across the starting line. Then there was communication. My guide couldn't just holler over his or her shoulder, and there's traffic and wind, and I'm virtually deaf. So we got a whistle, and it was a really simple code: one tweet, one blast, one whistle for uh, walk, two for run, and three to stop. And that's how uh, my team and I ran that 135 miles through the desert and into the mountains, and it was incredible. We had about the first 50 miles. There's a time. There are a few time cutoffs along the way, and the first 50 miles is the first time cutoff, and we had I believe it was 14 hours to get there. And we had made, I was really worried because the first 300-mile races I'd done to qualify for this 135, uh, I'd not completed any of them with more than 30 minutes to spare. I was like the cutoff king for ultra marathons, just barely making it before being disqualified. And now I was running a longer distance than I'd ever run in my life, more difficult terrain with these time cutoffs. I had no idea if I was going to, make it. I knew I could push myself and do the whole distance. I had no idea if I'd be able to do it at a pace that wouldn't get me kicked out. But that first 50 miles, we ran that through the night. We started we started at 8 p.m. and we made it to the first time check with 5 hours to spare.
Wow.
Yeah. I was blown away. My team was blown away. We'd all surprised ourselves. And but it was almost no gain. It was just almost flat the entire way. It was hot. It was Death Valley, but it was through the night, and I call that the Badwater kindergarten, because we were really about to get my education with the first climb. And so the first climb into the mountains was Owen Pass, or Town Pass, and oh man, it was a butt kicker. And then it was a straight away, and the second climb was Father Crawley, and that's where I really broke down. It was so difficult, And that's like the real crucible is Father Crawley. That's about 70 or so miles into the race. And it's middle of the day, super hot. And not only was, it's hot, I've already run 70 miles, but I'm climbing the side of a mountain. There's these switchbacks. And as the street, the road does this angle, they bevel the road at like a racetrack. So the cars don't just like fly off the side of the road. So because my balance the more fatigued I get, the worse my balance gets. So not only am I trying to just move forward, I'm trying not to let the steep grade of this road gravity take me into the oncoming traffic. So all of these things, my fatigue, the difficulty, was frustration because I know I have the willpower to keep moving forward. But when my balance goes, I can pick up my feet, but I don't have as much control over where I put them down. And it came to that, that just a point where I broke down. I needed to stop. My team gathered around me. They gave me support, and they said that, they had, my not just, not just my logistics handled, guidance, fuel, calories and salt and water, but they have my safety, right? They're not going to let me go any further or any faster or anywhere that I wasn't going to be safe. And I had to remember that. It was just like being on that EOD team. I had to put my trust in my team and, all those service members and all those key players on the battlefield. We, as service members, have to put our trust, sometimes our lives, in the hands of people we don't even know sometimes. And I had to remember that, and I put my trust, my life, in the hands of my team, and they guided me up the rest of that mountain and across the rest of that course. And after that,
What was your final time?
42 hours and 17 minutes.
So how good did you sleep after that?
How did I sleep?
Yeah.
I slept pretty well. In fact, I crashed really hard. My feet were a little chewed up. I lost a couple toenails. But after a bath and some like mindless gnawing on a few slices of pizza, I racked out. And then the next morning, we packed up and headed back to the airport. I slept a little bit on the way, but it was great. I felt this incredible sense of accomplishment. Um, you know, there's also reconnecting with those parts of you, those emotions, like the trust in your team, like allowing yourself to be vulnerable. And because that's the thing about courage, right? You can't have courage without vulnerability. They're two sides of the same coin.
Yeah.
And it might have been brave, courageous of a blind deaf guy to even attempt Badwater. But at the same time, I had to admit my vulnerability and I had to hand over my trust to my team to really make it happen. And that's how I could be successful.
So now, obviously, you're probably in demand speaking even more now than ever. Your podcast is fire. If your numbers have gone up, I take personal responsibility because I've listened to every episode, some of them even more than once. So tell us what you're up to now.
Well, no, like I mentioned, we've got the fudge business and other chocolate confections and treats like that. We even have a really cool tactical apron in our apparel store, and so that's my business with my wife, eodfudge.com. We started investing in real estate, and we've been doing that for the last 5 6 years now. And we have long-term and short-term rentals in Ohio and Florida. I started a real estate investment company with a fellow wounded buddy of mine, a friend of mine who I deployed with to Afghanistan that first time in the Navy. He's a Navy Master at Arms who recently retired out of Pensacola, and I said, I talked to him. I said, hey, listen, I have some definite weaknesses when it comes to real estate investing, like being able to jump in a car and go check out a property. So uh, I taught him what I'd been learning in real estate, and we partnered up. And we find off-market properties, we fix them up, or and either sell them or hold them, or we'll find other investors that are interested in taking the projects on, and that's been going well. And on top of that, I started a podcast, Point of Impact with Aaron Hale, and that's been going pretty well. And another, I would say, courageous thing, a blind deaf guy starting a podcast, but it's been going pretty well so far, and I'm enjoying every minute of it.
Okay, so now last question is, how do we find you and how do we support your mission?
Of course, uh, you can support EOD Fudge by going to eodfudge.com. You can listen to the podcast on all of the major platforms, and you can find pointofimpactpod.com for the links to all those. And you can contact me, Aaron, at solidgroundhomebuyers.co.
Okay, now my wife is a big fudge person, so I'm definitely going to be ordering some fudge for my bride. So I can't wait to when we hang up, I'm going to go out and I'm going to place an order just for my bride and my best friend. So Aaron, brother, I just want to say thank you. I'm truly humbled and grateful for your friendship.
Yeah, the same to you, Richard. I really appreciate it.
All right, guys, just so you remember, if you love coffee, check out coffee, and I'll get you that information. If you want to hire a veteran, also I'll get you that information. Also, I'm taking in 5 students, just 5, where I'm going to teach them everything that I've learned from people like Aaron, people like the authors of Rich Dad, Poor Dad, all my millionaire and billionaire friends. Everything I've learned, I'm going to be able to teach you. I'm only taking in 5 students. So if you look to be coached by the Comeback Coach, just let me know. And guys, I know, Aaron, I know you can't see my shirt, but my shirt says, "Today I decide." And I took that from Joel Osteen because I love Joel. And he says, it's our decision to be the victim or the victor. And today I choose to be a victor. So guys, if you're listening, it's your choice to be the victim or the victor, just like Aaron is. Aaron is a victor. I love you guys. Have an amazing day. And remember, vertical momentum, the only way to go is but up. Aaron, brother, I love you. I thank you so much.
Thanks, brother. Love being on.
Have a great week, brother. Be good.